Okay, well, it is recording now. So hello and welcome everybody to, I believe, the 35th. I believe the 35th
Yes.
episode of Hell in a, 35th episode of Hell in a Handbasket. So today, so it's been a while since we had an episode. It's my fault. I was under the weather, and Nanya and I were discussing. I'm actually still not feeling myself. So we'll see. We'll try to get through this episode and do the best job that we can. But basically, we can't not talk about all of the hubbub, all of the hullabaloo surrounding the Ukrainian peace deal. So let me remind you guys how back in when Nanya and I started Hell in a Handbasket, around the time that Trump was going to win the election, which we also both predicted, Jesus Christ. We predicted right away, right, that what would happen is that the Trump administration would try to dump this as much as they can on Europe, because there's no other way to go. You know, you can see, like, if the version of the story that we have been telling, the mainstream media has been spreading this whole entire time, was even remotely accurate, we would have been somewhere else. We wouldn't have wound up where we are right now. So what we can see is that it's almost like that strategy was like a bluff. Either that, or they really, really believed themselves. But at this point in time, it seems like it's harder and harder for them to get to that, to actually seem like they're actually really, really believing their own propaganda. At this point in time, it's kind of confusing, and it's hard for me to understand what the point is. So it seems to me that what the Europeans are trying to do is to keep the war going at any cost. And let's take a look at so of course, what we know, what's been happening, right? That Donald Trump put out his, 31-point peace plan. The 31 points got boiled down to 28 points. The 28-point peace plan. So here we have Trump's 28-point deal in full, The Telegraph. Okay. It's a deal that has been kept under lock and key while being hashed out between American and Russian officials. European governments, without seeing its contents, derided it as a capitulation and surrender to the Kremlin. But now The Telegraph can reveal the entire 28-point plan put forward by Donald Trump to end the war in Ukraine. Okay, this is Trump's plan, right?
Okay. I haven't read this, by the way, so this was my first time reading it.
Okay. Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. That is, what does that even mean? Like, okay, we confirm it. The Russians say this is a sovereign country. The Americans say this is a sovereign country. I think that This is kind of like a throwaway point. Okay,
yeah, fair enough. Move on to the next one. That's easy enough.
Yeah, comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. All ambiguities of the last 30 years will be considered settled. I think this is a big one. Okay.
Why just the last 30 years, though?
Because that's ever since Ukrainian independence. So
yeah, but
all of this bullshit that we've been doing.
But there have been other ambiguities in European history beyond the 30 years. Like, my thought would be, why just 30 years? Screw that. And it's actually been longer than 30 years. They should just say, listen, we're just going to sort this out once and for all. Any sort of border disputes that Russia might have, any sort of, horse shit that you guys want to bring up from the past, vice versa. Let's all put our cards on the table now, sort it all out. Like, to me, that would be more meaningful than time boxing at the 30 years, because they'll just find something else to argue about outside the 30-year window, right?
Here's what I'm thinking. I think that the 30-year thing is key, because what it is doing is it's saying, okay, so let's say, for example, the Russians, okay, let's pick something like the biolabs thing, for example. Let's say the Russians take more of Ukraine and they find more of these biolabs. Well, I mean, if you want to go with Trump's plan here, all of these ambiguities will be settled. You're not going to sue, counter sue. You're not going to pull us out in the public, duke it out in the, out in the public sphere, we're going to sweep all of this under the rug. And this would probably include a Ukrainian corruption, right? Like I would say, for example, let's say we've been funding Nazi groups in Ukraine for those 30 years, right? And the Russians find the people that were responsible for this, or find some of the funding that was whatever, all of that it's good now. We're totally, it's kosher.
Right.
It's
and I guess what I'm saying is, since everybody is apparently given an opportunity to edit this, if I had my choice, I would change that 30 years to say 80 years, right? Or since World War II or whatever, right? Just to, make it clear, we're going to solve this once and for all. That's what I would like it to really read. That's all I'm saying.
I see.
But otherwise, I don't see a problem with number 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no way the Russians would agree for this. This right here, all ambiguities of the last 30 years will be considered settled. I think that's one that the Russians are going to be like, okay, well, you know what? We can work that point. Sure. What do we mean by all ambiguities? Because I think that the Russians still want to have a military tribunal for these hardcore, the hardcore nationalistic elements. They don't want to sweep this under the rug. They want to punish you and make an example of you. I don't think the Russians will be okay with this one. It is expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries, and NATO will not expand further. It is expected. I mean, okay. A dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States, to resolve.
Hold on, though. Why go back to number 3? Why wouldn't it be reciprocal here? Is it expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries or something like that, right? Like, just because NATO will not expand further, fine. But shouldn't they also have a pledge not to invade Russia? Anyway, that's what I would put in for my red line on number 3. Let's move on.
Okay. A dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States, to resolve all security issues, to create conditions for de-escalation in order to ensure global security and increase opportunities for cooperation and future economic development. Look at this. Oh, NATO, it's the United States. Yeah, we'll be mediating between you guys and NATO. Not like we are NATO.
Yeah. That's
come
hilarious.
On. Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees.
What does that mean?
Well, I think that's relatively open, and I think that the Russians, as that point stands, like that, Russians would not object to that, because they'd be like, yeah, of course, we'll give them security guarantees. You can give them security guarantees. That's pretty ambiguous and open-ended. Size of Ukrainian armed forces will be limited to 600,000 personnel. Now, from my understanding is the Russians were already not cool with this. The Russians were already like, nope.
Well, they originally proposed 85,000, I think.
85,000. Wow, that's even less than I remember. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and then you'll see that in the European revised counter peace plan, they actually even raised this number. Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future. I think that this is a bare minimum. This is you must have this, otherwise there can be no peace deal, right? And it's funny because
isn't that kind of, if you go back to point number 3, I think it was. Yeah,
will not invade neighbor countries.
Yeah, if NATO's not going to expand further, it's kind of a moot point then, number 7, because they're saying that they're going to put it in their constitution. So yeah. I guess NATO's agreeing not to let them in, and Ukraine is agreeing not to ask. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, and basically, when on this particular point, I was watching certain interviews on Ukrainian news channels, and they were like, "No, this is completely unacceptable. We can't change our constitution in the middle of a war." That's what their kind of excuses right now. We can't change it in the middle of a war. Well, I mean, yeah, that's how you guys changed it in the first place during a war, right? So,
yep,
change it right back, because originally in Ukrainian independence, that relied on it was enshrined. Ukrainian neutrality was enshrined in the Ukrainian Declaration of Independence. So
Sorry, I
just
jumped
bring it
ahead to
right
number
back.
9. We'll get there.
NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. This is just
fine.
Okay. European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland.
Have they told the Polish people that?
Yeah, what do the Poles think, right? Which, from my understanding, the Poles are like, no, America, don't go, come back, right? So I think the Poles are, it seems like of all of the Europeans, especially like would they be considered New Europe or Old Europe? I think they're more like newer Europe. They seem to have like a long-term kind of plan involving actually building up their defense sector. Because you look at Germany's just like, oh, we're going to double down and invest in all of this military production. You're like, yeah, with what fuel, with what workers, with what economy? You're going to try to really bail your economy out with Rheinmetall production of tanks? No, you're not going to do that. So anyway, 10. Okay, U.S. guarantee. The U.S. will receive compensation for the guarantee.
How much?
I would love to know this. I'd love to know what this exactly.
If Ukraine, who's paying for it?
Yes. Compensation from whom? From which party? If Ukraine invades, and compensation in what form too? If Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose the guarantee. Compensation, I think that might not even be money. That might just be like, rights for us to be able to control Ukrainian nuclear energy production.
Well, if you're Ukraine right now, you're just like, well, what's America's guarantee worth anyway? Right? It's not worth a piece of toilet paper. So,
well, that's what they want. They keep saying robust security guarantees is a necessary prerequisite. That's a huge thing. And if you look at the interviews of everybody constantly brings this back, they say, we need security guarantees and we want a ceasefire first.
Yeah, well, I want a pony. Go ahead.
So if Russia invades Ukraine, in addition to a decisive coordinated military response, all global sanctions will be reinstated. Recognition of the new territory and all other benefits of this deal will be revoked. If Ukraine launches a missile at Moscow or St. Petersburg without cause, the security guarantee will be deemed invalid.
What a strange bullet that is. Like, why just Moscow and St. Petersburg? And why just a missile? Like, this whole thing is poorly worded. It's extremely vague. And I don't understand why it would be a point in a 28-point plan.
Here's what I'm reading. When I read that point, I read that the Americans are trying to put distance between them and the Ukrainians using like American long-range missiles to bomb Moscow and St. Petersburg. So what they're saying, they're saying, okay, we'll stop bombing Moscow and St. Petersburg with the hands of the hands of our Ukrainian proxy. But they can't just say that. So they're just saying Ukraine won't do this thing. And then they also add without cause. So I mean, what if we say that?
Read the language here. Hey, you could tell that whoever wrote this isn't very bright. Like they're not an intelligent person. Just you could tell that by the writing of it.
I think that
it just seems really amateurish.
Maybe I didn't try to read this thing in Russian. Maybe it makes sense if you take the language and you see how they try to spin it between Russian and English. It could be that it's somewhat strangely worded in a way to make sure that what it means the same exact thing in Russian as it does in English, and there is no room for ambiguity. It could be that. That's actually, it's on me. I should have hunted this down in Russian. Powerful global package of measures to rebuild Ukraine, including
you jumped over one. Ukraine is eligible for and will receive short-term
EU membership and will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while the issue is being considered. I wonder how Poland feels about that. I wonder how Romania feels about that. Yeah. Hungary, how do they feel about that? Nobody cares. 12, powerful global package of measures to rebuild Ukraine, including, but not limited to, the creation of a Ukraine Development Fund to invest in fast-growing industries, including technology, data centers, and artificial intelligence. The United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, modernize, and operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities. So from my understanding is this Ukrainian Development Fund is supposed to be like chaired by people close to Donald Trump. So double dipping. The United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, modernize, and operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure. This is crazy. Come on, like here's what we're going to require in exchange for screwing you guys over this hard. We're gonna screw you over even more. You're gonna have to compensate us. Let's start with your gas and pipeline infrastructure, like right where it's profitable. C, joint efforts to rehabilitate war-affected areas for the restoration, reconstruction, and modernization of cities and residential areas, infrastructure development, extraction of minerals and natural resources. You can see exactly what the Trump administration is like obsessed with. They're like, we need this compensation. We're going to be compensated by your gas. We're going to be compensated by development of infrastructure and extraction of minerals and natural resources. F, World Bank will develop a special financing package to accelerate these efforts. And then you're going to be indebted to the World Bank, and they're going to steal everything else that you had that was not nailed down and was nailed down. Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. A, lifting the sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon in stages on a case-by-case basis.
Discussed by who and agreed by who and when and how often? That's bullshit clause.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is complete BS. And if you think the Russians would go for this, you're fooling yourself. The United States will enter into a long-term economic cooperation agreement for mutual development in the areas of energy, natural resources, infrastructure, AI, data centers, rare earth mineral extraction projects in the Arctic, and other mutually beneficial corporate opportunities. So, and Russia will be reinvited to join the G8. Invited to rejoin the G8. Yeah,
I'm sure that they've got boxes and boxes of G8 swag just sitting in a warehouse somewhere ready to go. You know, it's interesting. There was a G7 foreign ministers meeting here just down the road from me, you know, about 3 weeks ago. No one noticed. So that tells you everything you need to know about the G7 in 2025.
Then check this out. 14, frozen funds will be used as follows. 100 billion in frozen Russian assets will be invested in U.S.-led efforts to rebuild and invest in Ukraine. The U.S. will receive 50% of the profits from this venture. Europe will add 100 billion to increase the amount of investment available for Ukraine's reconstruction. Frozen European funds will be unfrozen. The remainder of the frozen Russian funds will be invested in a separate U.S.-Russian investment vehicle that will implement joint projects in specific areas. This fund will be aimed at strengthening relations and increasing common interests to create a strong incentive not to return to conflict. So
I'm pretty sure that this document was written by the New York mob. Like, this is a mobster's contract.
This is
exactly who wrote it. The New York, the 5 families in the boroughs wrote this bloody thing. Don called him up and said, yeah, boys, I need you to come up with a document for you. Yeah, you got it.
Hey, Tony, I need you to write me up a document. So anyway, this is absolutely ridiculous. So they're trying to say, okay, but we're going to get our hands on those assets after all, and it's going to be all cool, and you can't be mad about it. You can't be mad about it. So I think that, you know, and what's funny is I don't know how much Russia would be opposed to this. I think the Russians would be totally okay with making certain compromises on this in order for them to be able to cement their gains in Ukraine, in order for them to be able to, I think it was Vladimir Putin that said it, like, solve this question for generations to come. Anyway, so yeah, we want that money. I always said it. They're gonna try to find a way to get their hands on it. They're gonna do it. They're not gonna not do it. They need it. They have to eat. Europe has to eat. Europe is starving, and part of the reason why the Ukraine war is what it is is because Europe needs to eat. Okay, we've heard them say this stuff over and over again. Like, for example, Europe needs its own lithium resources, and those lithium resources are located in the Donbass. Like, excuse me, not Ukraine's lithium resources. We need our own lithium resources. They're located in your country. You're not even part of the EU. Okay. A joint American-Russian working group on security issues will be established to promote and ensure compliance with all provisions of this agreement. 16, Russia will enshrine in law its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine. I think that's an easy one.
Which is basically one of the previous points anyway, not to invade. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. The United States and Russia will agree to extend the one thing here is that they're saying you'll enshrine it in law. So that's kind of the United States and Russia will agree to extend the validity of treaties on the non-proliferation and control of nuclear weapons, including START 1 treaty.
Sure.
Ukraine agrees to be a non-nuclear state in accordance with the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. 19, Zaporozhye nuclear power plant will be launched under the supervision of the IAEA, and the electricity produced will be distributed equally between Russia and Ukraine, 50-50. Man, we are planning. This is why they really wanted that Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. They want to get their hands on it. They still want to make billions of dollars off of the energy of that nuclear power plant. Both countries. Sorry, what?
At that point, won't fly with the Russians. They're not going to.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous. The Russians are going to be like, okay, you're going to try. How are you going to pull this one off? 20, both countries undertake to implement educational programs in schools and society aimed at promoting understanding and tolerance of different cultures and eliminating racism and prejudice. So
there was some ditzy blonde DEI person in the room when they were drafting this up, because maybe White House rules say you have to have a ditzy DEI person in every meeting. So the ditzy blonde DEI person came up with this one.
I'll tell you what
she said,
is.
Let's put that in. Okay, great, Susan. We'll put it in as number 20.
I'll tell you what this is. This is a stealth point. They're basically saying you will undo this policy of de-Russification, de-Romanianization, de-Hungarianization, right? Because what Ukraine's been trying to do is they've been trying to genocide their local minorities because if you erase a group's language and culture, that is still considered a genocide. So they're trying to Ukrainianize these people by force. It's been a huge sticking point with Hungary, obviously. And so basically what this is saying is that you will stop this de-Russification. You will continue to be offering these courses in Russian, in Hungarian, in whatever language, whatever minority. So you think the Russians are going to all of a sudden have some kind of massive Ukrainian language program in the Russian schools? I don't think so. This is a point that goes one way. So Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities. Oh, come on. Excuse me, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, those countries are all part of the EU. Hey, how are they treating their minorities? How are they treating their Russian minorities? This is bullshit.
Isn't it interesting that point made it in there, right? And I wonder what the Western media said about it, because why would Ukraine, this bastion of democracy that we've been hearing about, why would it need to focus on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities? I wonder if somebody in the media should start asking those questions. Isn't it interesting that it's in this document? Yet I'll bet you nobody has asked that question.
Yeah, and notice that A is a subpoint of 20, right? Mm-hmm. So this is you are going to discontinue the de-Russification policies.
Right.
B, both countries, this is still point 20, will agree to abolish all discriminatory measures and guarantee the rights of Ukrainian and Russian media and education. So Ukrainian media is not banned in Russia. You can watch Ukrainian news if you wanted to. It's Russian news that's barred in Ukraine. So
but even if it wasn't, like, both countries agree, I don't have a problem with that. Oh, look at C. Again, interesting how that ended in there. I wonder why.
All Nazi ideology and activities must be rejected and prohibited.
Gee, why would any sort of 28 peace plan have any mention of Nazis whatsoever? Well, that's really strange to me.
It's obviously it's because Ukraine does not have a problem with Nazis. This is the only reason why If they
Well,
did, then
clearly, and they had to put it in here just to highlight that they have no problem with it. So
yes.
that's cool. Awesome.
21 territories. Crimea, Lugansk, Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States.
Who cares about de facto?
Yeah,
Like,
well, you guys already, that ship has sailed.
it's already de facto. It's already de facto. Whether you call it de facto or not is irrelevant. It's already de facto.
Yeah, it's de facto Russia. So, I mean, like I said, like that ship has sailed. You're trying to bark up this tree after you took the deal that would have offered you this concession and just, wiped your butt with it. So, B, Kherson, Zaporozhye will be frozen along the line of contact, which will mean de facto recognition along the line of contact. Again, de facto. C, Russia will relinquish other agreed territories it controls outside of the 5 regions. Ukrainian forces will withdraw from the part of Donetsk Oblast that they currently control, and this withdrawal zone will be considered a neutral demilitarized buffer zone, internationally recognized as territory belonging to the Russian Federation. Russian forces will not enter this demilitarized zone. So wait, is this Russian territory or not? So this is going to be Russian territory, except for we're going to tell you how you can and can't use your Russian territory. See, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create that instead of Ukraine being the demilitarized zone between the EU and Russia, they want the Donbass to be the demilitarized zone between Ukraine, the EU, and Russia.
And I mean, the Russians have been crystal clear on this. The 4 oblasts are ours. Crimea are ours. Everything else we're willing to talk about. But those 4, they're already ours. It's already enshrined in our constitution. We're not changing it. Crimea, that's a done deal too. So are they willing to talk about troops in Kharkov or Sumy or somewhere like that and backing out? Or are they willing to talk about Odessa? Sure, I think they are. But not for much longer, right? Like at some point, Europeans need to shit or get off the pot. And the Russians are just going to say, okay, you can't talk to these people. We're going all the way to the river, and then we're going to Odessa. But I think we're months away from that. I think Putin's be more than happy with the 4. And which I think is a huge mistake, by the way. I think they need to take Odessa and everything else. But I'm not Putin. I'm not Russian. So what do I care?
Well, I mean, wait till you see the counter proposal. They might have no choice than to do that. Okay. After agreeing on future territorial arrangements, both the Russian Federation and Ukraine undertake not to change these arrangements by force. Any security guarantees will not apply in the event of a breach of this commitment. 23. Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using the Dnieper River for commercial activities, and agreements will be reached on the free transport of grain across the Black Sea. So even though the Russians are going to be on the Dnieper, they're going to allow Ukrainians to continue to use it as the vital artery that it actually is for Ukraine. 24. A humanitarian committee will be established to resolve outstanding issues. A, all remaining prisoners and bodies will be exchanged on an all-for-all basis. I don't think the Russians are going to be very thrilled about that. B, all civilian detainees and hostages will be returned, including children. C, family reunification program will be implemented. D, measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering of the victims of the conflict. I don't even know what that means. 25, Ukraine will hold elections in 100 days. 26, all parties involved in this conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims or consider any complaints in the future. Again,
who put that clause in?
See, this is the second time they're basically putting this in. They've dedicated 2 points to this whole thing of you're not going to look under the rug after this is all done. And I don't think the Russians are going to be cool with that. 27, this agreement will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council headed by President Donald J. Trump. Sanctions will be imposed for violations.
Legally binding by who? Like the UN? Like, how does that work?
Well, I mean, because it's a legal document. So in accordance to this document, I don't know. Or maybe they're going to write something up that the Russians will agree to. Because if you ever take a look through like archival documents with or like archival treaties between the Soviets and the Americans, or the Russians and the Americans, you could always see that they have the Russians are obviously good lawyers and obviously good diplomats. They always have points in the in these agreements that leave them some wiggle room, and like we're obviously not happy about that, because when push comes to shove later on, you could uncover these documents and say like, well, actually, what did we agree to in regards to NATO expansion?
Sure.
And the Russians are always very clear about those kinds of things. So I think that basically this whole thing about the agreement will be legally binding, this is a big one for Russia. The Russians demand that. They demand that this is going to be enshrined in some kind of international law. They want some kind of Austrian model for the Ukrainians, or what used to be the Finnish model, the Finland model. In order to secure peace, it demands that Ukraine slash the size of its army to 600,000 and give up missiles that can hit Moscow. Kiev will not be allowed to invade Russia, nor will it be able to use military force to reclaim land stolen from it by Moscow. Ukraine will not be allowed to welcome NATO troops into the country, and foreign fighter jets will only be allowed to stationed in Poland. Any breach of the deal will see Ukraine forfeit yet to be defined security guarantees from its American and European allies. The deal promises decisive military action against Russia and the reintroduction of sanctions if it attacks Ukraine again.
Why are they repeating what they're saying above? You know what I mean? Like, they just gave us the 28 points.
I don't know, maybe people didn't read all of them.
And now they're giving. Okay.
So here we go. Now we're going to read the counter proposal. So this is Reuters, full text of European counter proposal to the U.S.-Ukraine peace plan. So let's reopen that tab. Okay, so let's take a look at this thing and see all the reasons why this plan, as it is not acceptable to the Russians under any circumstance. Number one, all this right here, point number 2, as well as point number 26. No, 26. This is unacceptable. The Russians are not going to accept this point. They want to come for the criminals that caused this huge disaster for them. So number 1, that's already a no-go. Number 2, security guarantees. It depends on what that means, but if it means what they've implied, NATO-style security, Article 5 style security guarantees, that's going to be a no-go. Size of the Ukrainian armed forces limited to 600,000 personnel. That's going to be a no-go. NATO agrees not to
Isn't this the same agreement?
Yeah. So I'm just looking through this, and I'm saying this is all the points that are already a no-go. Now let's take a look at how the watered-down European version goes. Okay. Below is the text of a European counter-proposal to the United States draft 28-point Ukraine peace plan, seen by Reuters on Sunday. Counter-proposal drafted by Europe's E3 powers, Britain, France, and Germany, takes the U.S. plan as its basis and then goes through it point by point with suggested changes and deletions. The text is as follows. Number 1, Ukraine's sovereignty to be reconfirmed. Okay. 2, there will be a total and complete non-aggression agreement reached between Russia and Ukraine and NATO. All ambiguities from the past 30 years will be resolved. So far, it's the same. Point 3 of the...
Is it the same, though? Because I thought the previous one was between Russia and Ukraine and Europe, not NATO. Or am I wrong on that point?
I think that so far it's the same. Non-aggression between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. Yeah, you're right.
So why would they make that change, I wonder?
Interesting. That is interesting. I did not catch that. Point 3 is deleted. A draft of that plan seen by Reuters said there will be the expectation that Russia will not invade its neighbor and NATO will not expand further. So right away, they're saying this whole NATO expansion off the table. Nope. Which means that the Russians are never going to go for this plan, right? 4, after a peace agreement is signed, a dialogue between Russia and NATO will convene to address all security concerns and create a de-escalatory environment to ensure global security and increase the opportunity for connectivity and future economic opportunity. 5, Ukraine will receive robust security guarantees. That word again, robust security guarantees.
What did the previous one say?
The previous one said, number 5, Ukraine's reliable security guarantees. The robust security guarantees, it feels like that's their code language for Article 5 style security guarantee. Every time, they're not saying it here, but that's what they want. And that's what they always say when they talk about quote unquote robust security guarantees. Always pay attention to that. they always use that term, that combination of that phrase,
I would rather have reliable personally, but I don't know what robust means, but I guess they like using that
reliable word. You could have reliable but unrobust, right? Robust means that it's kind of implies both reliability as well as a certain measure of effectivity, right? Like it's robust. It can. That's kind of what I see. Anyway, Ukraine joining NATO depends on consensus of NATO members.
Hold on, go back to number 6.
Oh, right. Size of Ukrainian military to be capped at 800,000 in peacetime. Okay.
Yeah, in peacetime. Go back to the previous one.
600,000. Period.
But period. It wasn't in peacetime, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just be limited to 600,000 personnel.
So they're saying we're going to limit it to 800,000 in peacetime, but if the shit hits the fan, it'll be whatever we want.
That's right.
Gotcha.
And I was watching Vladimir Brovkin. It's this Russian-American scholar who has a YouTube channel. It's probably just called literally his name, Vladimir Brovkin. And he basically, when he talked about this particular point in one of his videos, and he was saying that the way that he sees it is that the EU does not want to give up their excellent proxy Ukraine. They want to continue to be able to maintain that ability for them to, if they have to, dial it up quickly. So they're reluctant to give up this best proxy that they've ever had. So they're basically saying that Ukraine can't be defanged. We'll refuse this point where you're trying to defang Ukraine. And this is another one that constantly gets brought up in these interviews, which I kind of have doubt that we'll be able to go through too many of those. But this constantly gets brought up. Ukraine joining NATO depends on consensus of NATO members, which does not exist. So let's reread this. So let's translate what this means. Ukraine joining NATO depends on consensus of NATO members. That's what this right here is irrelevant, right? Because what happens if it exists tomorrow? What happens if it exists the day after tomorrow or two decades from now?
That's why they put it in there. They're saying, no, NATO members will decide based on consensus, but they're saying don't worry about it because it currently doesn't exist. But to your point, tomorrow it might exist. So they're trying to dance around it very poorly. Again, this was written by somebody. This was written by Kaya Kallas for sure. She's an imbecile. And I have no doubt that a retard like her wrote this because like no serious person would come up with something like that.
Well, unless the goal is to make sure that the war doesn't end, which is what I think. All right. NATO agrees not to permanently station troops under its command in Ukraine in peacetime. Now, look at this. Permanently stationed under its command. So what happens if, you know what? These troops are not under the command of NATO. These troops are under the command of France or Italy or Germany.
Too.
Yeah, exactly. Permanently station, so I could temporarily station them in peacetime. Once there's war, then I can permanently station them. And as long as it's not, quote unquote, under NATO's command, good luck proving that, right? Good luck proving a negative. It's totally fine. 9, NATO jets will be stationed in Poland. 10, a U.S. guarantee that mirrors Article 5. See, this is what they mean by robust security guarantees. Article 5.
How's that Article 5 working out for him today? You know, U.S. to receive compensation for the guarantee.
If Ukraine invades Russia, it forfeits the guarantee. If Russia invades Ukraine, in addition to a robust, coordinated military response, all global sanctions will be restored, and any kind of recognition for the new territory and all other benefits from this agreement will be withdrawn. Okay, Russia, you better play nice. It's almost as if Russia is losing the war, and the EU is going to be the ones that lay down the law here. Come on.
All right, let's look at point 12 in detail, because that'll be the one these slippery eels are most concerned about. They want a cut of the pie.
Okay, so real quick, 11, Ukraine is eligible for EU membership. We'll get short-term preferred markets. Right, same thing. Now, 12, robust global redevelopment package for Ukraine, including but not limited to creation of Ukraine Development Fund to invest in high-growth industries, including technology, data centers, and AI efforts. B, the United States will partner with Ukraine to jointly restore grow, modernize, and operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure, which includes its pipelines and storage facilities. C, a joint effort to redevelop areas impacted by the war to restore, redevelop, and modernize cities and residential areas. D, infrastructure development. E, mineral and natural resource extraction. F, a special financing package that will be developed by the World Bank to provide financing to accelerate these efforts.
Okay, so let's go back to the original.
All right, so this is all number 12. Let's see. Originally, what do we have for number 12? Powerful global package of measures to rebuild Ukraine, including but not limited to A, creation of Ukraine Development Fund to invest. B, United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, modernize, operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure. C, joint efforts to rehabilitate war-affected areas. That's basically the same. Infrastructure development, extraction of minerals.
It's all the same, actually.
Okay. Now,
it's all the same.
So 13, Russia will be integrated in the global economy. 13, Russia will to be progressively reintegrated into the global economy. So, it's a conditional. You do one good thing for you, we we allow you to reintegrate a little bit more. You do something we don't like, we remove the privilege of the integration into the world economy. That's a joke. A, sanction relief will be discussed and agreed upon in phases and on a case-by-case basis. B, the United States will enter into a long-term economic cooperation agreement to pursue mutual development in the areas of energy, natural resources, infrastructure, AI, data centers, rare earths, joint prospects in the Arctic, as well as various other mutually beneficial corporate opportunities. Russia to be invited back into the G8. Something tells me the Russians think, you could take your G8 and just go take a hike with it. I think that the Russians are feeling very comfortable in BRICS right now. Ukraine will be fully reconstructed and compensated financially, including through Russian sovereign assets that will remain frozen until Russia compensates damage to Ukraine. You see what I mean? It's almost like, you're getting your guys' roles confused. You're the losing side. You don't get to lay this down and say, this is how it's going to be. The only purpose to do this, in my opinion, is to sabotage any potential peace efforts. Okay. 15, Joint Security Task Force to be established with the participation of U.S., Ukraine, Russia, and the Europeans to promote and enforce all of the provisions of this agreement. The Europeans are like, we're not going to be left out. Russia will legislatively enshrine a non-aggression policy towards Europe and Ukraine. That's the same. 17, the United States and Russia agree to extend non-nuclear proliferation and control treaties, including Fair Start. Ukraine agrees to remain a non-nuclear state under the NPT. The Zaporozhye nuclear power plant will be restarted under supervision of IAEA, and the power shall be shared equitably in a 50-50 split between Russia and Ukraine. 20, Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities. Yeah.
They got rid of the other stuff, though.
What other stuff? 20? Countries will implement educational programs. Oh, yeah, that whole educational programs thing. Nazi ideology. Abolish discriminatory measures. So they did get rid of a bunch of this stuff. Yeah. They just say religious tolerance. That's it. 21, territories. Ukraine commits not to recover its occupied sovereign territory through military means. Recover its occupied sovereign territory through military means. So what they're taking off the table any potential of a de jure recognition of Russian sovereignty over those territories. They're saying this is going to be de facto. Negotiations on territorial swaps will start from the line of contact. In other words, the whole sore point where the Ukrainians don't want to relinquish their remaining positions in Donetsk, Oblast. They want to basically say that no, it starts here. So this is basically a version of freezing the conflict. 23, Russia shall not obstruct Ukraine's use of the Dnieper River for purpose of commercial activities, and agreements will be reached for grain shipments to move freely through the Black Sea. The difference, I think, here is in the way that there's like the language, right? Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using the Dnieper River for commercial activities versus Russia shall not obstruct, right? So one of them is like the Russians will play nice. The other one is like the Russians will be held, we'll hold them to this kind of. So see what I mean? Like, come on, like you're the losing side, guys. 24, a humanitarian committee will be established to resolve open issues All remaining prisoners and bodies will be exchanged on the principle of all for all. All civilian detainees and hostages will be returned, including children. There will be a family reunification program. Provisions will be made to address the suffering of victims from the conflict. So I think this is one that's added, right? Measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering from the victims of the conflict. No, they have that. Provisions will be made to address the suffering victims. Okay. 25. Ukraine will hold elections as soon as possible after signing the peace agreement. So instead of having a actual defined limit. Yeah. Okay. 26. Provisions will be made to address the suffering of the victims of the conflict. Again?
Yeah.
That's 27. This agreement will be legally,
like, this is amateur hour.
Will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by a board of peace chaired by President Donald J. Trump. There will be penalties for violation. And finally,
that is so low rent that they missed that. Right? Like, oh man. Like,
what do you mean?
Tells you this is an actual counter proposal, and they've got two of the same points literally within eyeball of each other, and nobody picked up on that. Point 24D and 26 are the exact same, right? Like, you read this and you just say, who came up with this? Whoever came up with this clearly is not serious, because look at the amount of effort they put into it. That's what I'm looking at when I read this.
I think that there's both points. Both of them have certain repeated points, but this is pretty just
not like this.
Nose. Yeah, this is.
This is children wrote this.
All right. However, maybe it's like, again, one of those things where the original language was something else. So basically, let's take a look at
it was the same. It was different twice. Like, the same thing came up twice, so it must have been off twice, right? Like, the point is they fucked it up. That's what you're dealing with here. This is the level of bureaucrat that exists in the European Union right here. That I don't need to say anymore, do I?
Take a look at they actually so watch provisions will be made addressing the suffering, right? Provisions to be made to address the suffering. That's point 26. Look at what they actually removed. Point 26. They repeated a different point than the American plan repeated. Because the American plan repeated a point from up here, which said all parties, basically involved in this conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims. I think the only reason why the Europeans would get rid of that is because I think maybe they really think this, or maybe this is what they're trying to bluff their way into. Basically imply that no, we're still going to hold the Russians to account for their war crimes, kind of. So they got rid of that versus, the Russians are like, nah, we're going to be holding the Ukrainians to account for this. That was an unacceptable point for us for completely different reasons.
I'd imagine it goes deeper than that. I'd imagine that they've all got their hands really, really greasy with all that money laundering. And these people are not that bright, right? Like, you can look at Zelensky, go read the Panama Papers. It's not like they hide this stuff, well.
Yeah.
So what makes you think that some greedy bastard like von der Leyen or Jens Stoltenberg or any of these clowns, right? Any of these politicians, what makes you think that they're bright? I assure you they aren't. So they're probably thinking, geez, some of this corruption is going to come back to haunt us. We better remove some of these provisions here because we don't want to be on the hook for it. That's how I'd read it.
But it's crazy that they got rid of this we will not be held to account thing. It's almost like you're delusional if you're not begging for that. The Americans are, at least they understand that, hey, listen, we want to after this is all done, we want to just shake hands and not look what's under the rug. Just let's just sweep it under the rug and never look under there again. The Europeans are like, no, we're still going to try to we're still going to try to use whatever assets that we have, whatever leverage that we have in order to shit on you even more. And so, no, we don't want to give you that point of this amnesty because, like I said,
I disagree. I think they're trying to save their own bacon here. I don't think it has anything to do with Putin. Right? Okay. Yeah, I just think they're trying to save their own bacon.
And then final point, upon all sides agreeing to this memorandum, a ceasefire will be immediately effective upon both parties withdrawing to the agreed upon points for the implementation of the agreement to begin. Ceasefire modalities, including monitoring, will be
under
agreed.
U.S. supervision. Like, so
Yes.
hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Right.
By both parties that do supervision. Okay, so you know what? Like, okay, so basically they're saying that, and as if this was already obviously not dead on arrival, as if the first peace plan wasn't dead on arrival. And I'm trying to think, I think it was Peskov who's like, my theory, Peskov confirms my theory, where Peskov's like, hey, listen, even the relatively humble progress that we've sort of been able to shamble towards is being undermined actively by the Europeans. So even Peskov is like basically confirming my theory of like, no, the Europeans are throwing a fit because they don't want this party to be over and they don't want to be on the hook. And there's
I believe that. Like, I absolutely believe that the Europeans want to keep this going on because they've got nothing left, right? Like, to your point, all of this is money for them, right? So they want to keep the party going. The bureaucrats, I mean, the politicians and the bureaucrats, they want to keep it going. Ordinary Europeans certainly don't, but they want to keep it going because they're all a bunch of greedy, corrupt, incompetent fools who don't know any better but to lie, cheat, and steal. So, but the problem is everybody sees through it now, and people, they're just fed up with all of them. And if they're not voted out of power soon, they're going to be kicked out of power by force. That's what will happen in Europe. The price is going to go up.
All right, let's take a look at some of the fallout for this peace plan. Here we go.
Here's why you should.
Oh, of course, there's going to be advertisements because I don't have advertisement blocking on this browser.
Search engine like Google, but it's private.
Come on, dude. I need to get on that.
You need DuckDuckGo.
Listen, don't advertise to me. I will go out of my way not to use your product because I'm just going to be so pissed that I'm being advertised to. Just no.
Downloading DuckDuckGo on.
No, do not guys, we tell you not right now. I had no opinion about this earlier, but you're not going to, don't download DuckDuckGo.
As key strikes,
just for that advertisement. All right, let's go.
Russia's shadow fleet in the Black Sea, the drone attack adding pressure on Russia's oil revenue, critical for funding this war. Russia, meanwhile, hitting back with a deadly missile attack on Kyiv, all coming as peace talks hit a crucial stage. A Ukrainian delegation now in the U.S. for meetings that will include Special Envoy Steve Witkoff before he heads to Moscow to meet Putin this week. Fox News contributor Dan Hoffman served in Moscow as a former CIA station chief, joining us now. And Dan, things are really coming to a head now in Florida with this meeting between Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Witkoff, Jared Kushner, that's going to meet with this Ukrainian delegation headed up by Ukrainian Security Secretary Rustem Umerov. Where do you see this headed?
Well, I think these meetings are really important, not just for the United States and Ukraine to discuss the peace process and the upcoming trip from Special Envoy Witkoff to Russia, but also for the Ukrainians to share battlefield updates, what they're seeing on the ground, and how they see the war going and potential for a future deal in the making.
Why is he wearing an earpiece? How can he not hear everything?
Results have passed his prologue. Russia's going to continue this war. And their strategic objectives, which is to topple the government of Ukraine, those haven't changed much. Putin likes to talk. He likes to negotiate because he feels like he could influence the United States not to pursue further sanctions on Russia and to hold on giving Ukraine military equipment like Tomahawk missiles. But I don't see Russia very interested in negotiating. However, it's still worth pursuing, and good on the Trump administration for trying.
And Dan, it seems that one of the biggest sticking points is this idea that in this deal that Ukraine would cede territory, particularly in the Donbass, particularly Donetsk.
Right. If you listen to General Jack Keane and the Institute for
General Jack Keane, we've discussed this guy, this traitor to the country.
Study of war, and I would encourage all the viewers to read some of the analysis from Institute for Study of War. That would be extremely dangerous for Ukraine. Those are heavily fortified positions in Donetsk. The last thing Ukraine wants to do is give that up and present Putin an opportunity down the road to launch another invasion of Ukraine when Ukraine would be vulnerable. Putin has violated every agreement he's ever signed, going back to the one that his predecessors signed.
Again, he's going to bring up the Budapest Memorandum.
Budapest Memorandum, which promised Ukraine's territorial integrity and independence. And so Ukraine.
So let's remember that the Budapest Memorandum was violated first by the Americans as well as the Ukrainians. The Russians came late to the table, but of course, this is never the story that we hear. We hear this: the Ukrainians gave up their nukes in exchange to not be invaded by the Russians, and the Russians invaded them anyway, kind of thing, right? Completely missing the point that, number one, Ukraine never had any nukes. Number two, Ukraine is the most corrupt country, right now in the world. Wartime just makes a more corrupt country even more corrupt. So this was a decision to get the nuclear weapons out of the hands of the Ukrainians, out of the hands of the Kazakhstanians. We discussed this on previous episodes where certain American deep state actors were saying, no, we should not get rid of those nukes from the Ukrainians and from the Kazakhstanians because they'll be pointed at the Russians. They will never be pointed at us. So we remember there was a whole bunch of hullabaloo surrounding these supposed Ukrainian nukes. But yes, just remember, folks, the Budapest Memorandum was first violated by the Americans and the Ukrainians. So to throw a fit and say, well, the Russians attacked after you guys already by force came in there and tried to change Ukrainian politics, which goes against the Budapest Memorandum.
Needs to be prepared with Europe's backing to deter any future Russian attack. That's critical.
Dan, what impact do you see in all of this playing with the fact that Zelensky?
They both have massive ears.
Top guy,
massive ears.
With them for the very beginning.
I can't see it.
He is a major operator behind the scenes. Now resigning, telling the media that he's headed to the front. He's out of the picture now. Do you think that affects things?
Well, I think in the larger sense, in the wake of that corruption scandal around the Ukrainian energy, Energoatom, the conglomerate, certainly concern, and I'm sure that will be a topic for discussion. But President Zelensky's got a deep bench. He's got Umerov, who will be leading this delegation with the head of military intelligence, Budanov. They've been there fighting since the onset of this Russian attack. And leading Ukraine's forces, and their strategy. So I don't think that Ukraine will miss a beat here.
So just a heads up, Budanov ended up not participating in the talks because the photos that came out afterwards, he was nowhere to be seen. So it seems like Budanov got sidelined, and what happened was they had his right-hand man instead. He had his right-hand man join the negotiations. It's kind of, this is what the buzz is about this whole about this talk, because the Ukrainians try to put it front and center that Budanov is going to be part of these talks, and for him not to show up in any of the photos, he would have wanted to be in those photos. So I think that there's probably some truth to that. I don't know, maybe he was meeting with some of the three-letter agencies that are responsible for his rise,
and it's an opportunity for President Zelensky.
I would say that, the message that they got wasn't good. And, the Europeans, this is not the first peace deal. It's not the first ceasefire. It's not the first, this, by my count, is at least the third since the beginning of this year where, there was some sort of ceasefire that was just on the horizon. And then the Europeans came in and fucked it all up. Right?
Sabotaged it. Yep.
So this is not new. But I think it's getting real old. And that's why they sent the Secretary of the Army guy over and not some fruitcake like Kellogg, because Buddy went over there and he laid the hammer down. And my guess is it went something like, we're out. If you guys want to keep buying weapons, give us a call. But in the meantime, we're out. And also, we're not giving you ISR anymore, because we're trying to, move on from this. And we can't do that with half a foot in. So peace be with you. Like I said, give Raytheon a call. Give Lockheed a call if you need any shit. And otherwise, we'll catch you on the flip side. And that was basically the message. And the Europeans now, as you can tell, I think they're starting to back down from all of this, even though this only came out a week or whatever ago. They're backing away from it now because they realize they don't have any cards to play, and their dealer has just quit the game. So
it doesn't seem like that. It seems like they're completely delusional sometimes. Like you listen to
I don't think so. Yeah, she's nuts, but she doesn't matter, right? No national politician is going to be able to get any of this approved, right? Because nobody supports it. The UK can't pass a budget. France can't pass a budget. Germany is flat broke. All of these promises of a Euro fund for this and that and the other thing, it's all fantasy. Like, it's all talk. There's no hard money being committed to anything. So, and it won't be, because the people will reject it outright. You can't go to a population and say, okay, we're going to tax you up the asshole like they're planning on doing in the UK, and say, oh yeah, by the way, we still expect you to pay for this corrupt country over here, which none of you cared about in the first place. Now, that's what I'm saying. If they don't start listening to the people, they're going to be removed from power forcefully. And that's what it's going to get to, because people aren't going to put up with cutting of benefits and their standard of living.
No, dude, the Germans have been pretty cucked pretty hard.
No, I don't think so. I think you're seeing lots of violence going on in Germany these days. And I think you're seeing lots of protests going on in Germany these days. And I think you see the AfD continue to rise in popularity.
Yeah, they did have to assassinate those AfD politicians. So,
you know, the trajectory is only going one way for the Mertzes of the world and the rest of these globalist cocksuckers. So they're either going to get voted out or their heads are going to be rolling down the street. One of the two. Those are the options.
Let's check out our one of our favorite Russophobes, John Herbst. I always love to hear what this guy has to say. It's always it's so informative.
The global community is paying close attention to negotiations between the United States and Ukraine, and also Europe, regarding a peace plan to end Russia's aggression in Ukraine. What are the elements of the peace plan that was provided by the United States to Ukraine that would work essentially against stopping Moscow from taking control?
Notice, what are the points of the plan that are not going to be acceptable for Ukraine? He doesn't pause to even consider what are the points that are going to be not acceptable to the Russians.
Control of Ukraine. There are several. Most important is the point that would cede Ukrainian-controlled territory, highly defensible territory in western Donbass, to Russia. In other words, territory Moscow has tried for nearly 4 years to conquer and have been unable to. Point two, limitations on Ukraine's military, both in terms of manpower and in terms of weaponry, and no limitations on the aggressor's military.
Oh, you see, how is this? The Russians are winning a war, and then we don't get to impose upon them a limitation of their military industrial complex and military forces buildup. Like,
exactly.
That's the reason why there's a war, bro.
In terms of Russian manpower and Russian weaponry. Third, a blanket commitment that Ukraine does not join NATO, getting nothing in response from Moscow.
What do you want in response from Moscow for that?
Yeah, okay, we won't join NATO either. Like,
it's hard to imagine the Ukrainian government doing this except under massive pressure. If such a deal were made,
yeah, massive pressure that we should be putting on them,
we could claim peace, which would not last more than a few years at most. Because with the territory that this plan would force Ukraine to give to Russia, Russia's ability to conduct offensive operations and take certainly all of Ukraine up to the Dnipro River and beyond goes way up. And that will be a massive mistake for the United States. Papers are reporting that negotiations in the last 24 hours between the United States and Ukraine, also with European participation, have removed many of the problematic points that I've already referred to. It doesn't explicitly say that, for example, the point about ceding Ukrainian-controlled territory in western Donbass to Russia has been removed, but I suspect from the public statements that's no longer part of the text. If you remove that, if you remove the language about limits on Ukrainian weapons and manpower and none on Russian, or alternatively, you add to that limitations, substantial limitations on, for example, Russian forces within 200, 300, 400 kilometers of the Ukrainian border, that would be a good thing. The plan that has been discussed
That would be a good thing.
includes the mention of U.S.
How are you going to make that good thing happen?
security guarantees for Ukraine. But we have no clarity on that. If they are rock solid security guarantees, like the one Article 5 provides under NATO,
Again,
that could offset many things. But we've also had American security assurances to Ukraine under the Budapest Memorandum, which were no obstacle to Russian aggression. So they have to be rock solid. If you have all those things, no cession of necessary defensible territory from Ukraine to Russia, no undue limitations on the Ukrainians and not the Russians, rock solid security guarantees, I think it's safe to say that President Trump could achieve his objective of a durable peace, one that Moscow would not dare break.
Oh yeah, Moscow is so afraid.
They won't
These guys
dare.
don't realize what.
They won't dare
We're-
break.
Okay, America is no longer the predominant military power. End of story. End of story. They got nothing left. There's nothing left in the trunk. So
That's right. And
Russia's
I
not
think the
afraid.
Americans' cupboard is dry. Wait till you see what the European cupboard looks like. So, yeah, you
The
and what army?
European cupboards have got some old cheese wheels in there, and that's about it. They got fuck all too, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. So this John Erbs coming out there. He's part of the Atlantic Council, right? Going out there and saying that, like, oh, let me tell you what's acceptable, what's not acceptable from my perspective. Who the hell are you, and how are you going to achieve what's quote unquote acceptable in your perspective? Like,
the dude looked like he was about 90 years old. He probably stormed Normandy back in the day. He's so out of touch with like everything. It's clear, right?
Ambassador to Russia, and I think or to Ukraine. I think he was ex-ambassador to whatever. This guy was had played an important role in American foreign policy. So this is the kind of people this is our quote unquote elites, right? Our leaders.
If he, like, you could tell the way he was talking, he didn't have a clue what he was talking about. These elites are all stupid. These are all really stupid people. They really are.
Well,
They
he
know
can't
their
take a step
talking
back.
points. They're spokesmodels. That's it. They're
can't take
actors.
Somebody like Herbst, which we've played him before, he can't take a step back. He's always pushed the maximalist line. He is a professional Russophobe. That's why he is where he is at. So he's going to say this stuff. And it's just the delusion of not understanding where it is that you like what maybe it's one of those things where then later on he could say, I told you so. We should not have made this plan or this deal with the Russians as if we had a choice, right? Okay, so I think this is pretty interesting. Trump's push to end Ukraine war raises fears of, quote, ugly deal for Europe. Ooh, Europe is upset about this deal. Europeans fear deal may not take account of their security. U.S. initiative revives fear over Trump commitment to NATO. Rubio says Europeans will be involved in talks on NATO-EU role in any deal. Europeans struggle for leverage to influence any settlement.
So don't those bullet points say everything? Like, the deal itself, the 28-point plan, specifically says that there's going to be a comprehensive security deal that covers the interests of Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. It says that in both deals, I believe. So if you just go back to the bullets, they're saying that this is their fear, but that's already in there. And then they're saying, well, we fear Trump's commitment to NATO. If you get the comprehensive security deal that the Russians have been looking for decades, you don't need NATO, right? You don't.
You have to make a deal with the Russians, and that's what they don't want to do. Because I
That's
mean,
what they don't want to
otherwise
do,
you're going to be
because-
the big brother. They don't want the Russians to be their big brother in Europe, the most powerful.
It's not that. It's they don't want people to find how much money they've stolen. That's all. That's all it is. It has nothing to do about who they're subject.
I do think that
subjugating to.
they have some kind of irrational dislike of the Russians, though. for sure.
Absolutely, but that irrational dislike is currently being overshadowed by the very rational fear that they have that they're going to get caught. That's what I think.
That they have nothing that they could do. You guys are nude. The emperor has no clothes. Brussels, December 2nd. However, Donald Trump's latest push to end the Ukraine war pans out, Europe fears the prospect of a deal sooner or later that will not punish or weaken Russia as its leaders had hoped. placing the continent's security in greater jeopardy. So you see what's going on. The reason
Again, you reach a peace deal with Russia, you don't have a problem. Like, all you have to do is sit down and talk.
they do have
That's
a problem. They want to punish
No, I
and
get it, but
weaken. So they're saying
know.
this is not going to do those two things. Who's going to punish Russia? You and what army? Who's going like punish or weaken? So they're still on their thing where the Russians need to suffer a strategic defeat in Ukraine. They need to be weakened so they quote unquote can't ever do this thing again, can't ever invade, blah, 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 right? So they're still, and this I think says everything. This shows you why their counter proposal is as it is. It's a spoiler. It's a way to say, see, here's your peace deal. Let me just wipe my ass with it. Let me wipe my feet on it. This is nothing, right? This is our requirements. Who the hell are you, and why should anybody pay attention to your quote unquote requirements? Europe may well even have to accept a growing economic partnership between Washington, its traditional protector in the NATO alliance, and Moscow, which most European governments and NATO itself say is the greatest threat to European security. So now the Europeans are afraid of being left out in the cold. Is that the case? Although Ukrainians and other Europeans managed to push back against parts of a 28-point U.S. peace plan to end the fighting that was seen as heavily pro-Russian, any deal is still likely to carry major risks for the continent. That deal, they say, is heavily, quote-unquote, pro-Russian. This is Reuters. Yet Europe's ability to influence a deal is limited, not least because it lacks the hard power to dictate terms. Okay. Article is over? No, there's more. It had no representatives at talks between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Florida at the weekend, and will only watch from afar when U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff visits Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. I get the impression that slowly the awareness is sinking that at some point there will be an ugly deal, said Luc van Middelaar, founding director of the Brussels Institute for Geopolitics think tank. So you know why this is happening? It is because of the previous paragraph, previous sentence. Yet Europe's ability to influence a deal is limited, not least because it lacks the hard power to dictate terms. Boom. I have just addressed the following two sentences. Okay. Quote, Trump clearly wants a deal. What is very uncomfortable for the Europeans is that he wants a deal according to great power logic, where the U.S., they are Russia, we are big powers.
Yeah.
Rubio,
Okay. How is that different from any other time in world history? Like, I'm sorry, Slovenia, nobody cares about you, but it's the way it is. The Europeans had their chance for the last 4 years to be involved, and they chose not to.
Let's think about
right.
Well, let's think about Minsk 1 and 2 and the France, Russia, Germany. What was that? They called it the coalition of something, right? The Americans were not included in those talks. That was your chance, Europe. That was your chance, EU, to put the pressure down on Ukraine. You guys were not.
What did they do? They admittedly did everything to sabotage it, according to their own elected officials.
Exactly, according to themselves.
So everybody knows this, right? That's why nobody takes Europe seriously anymore. That's why when the foreign minister wants to plan a trip to China, nobody will have a meeting with him, so he decides not to go. That's why they're getting kicked out of all these countries that they're going to down in Africa. Nobody wants to listen to these clowns anymore. Like, at least the U.S. has still got some agency left because as an economic power. Europe's got nothing, absolutely nothing but stale, old everything.
Yeah, they have fear. See, Europeans fear. That's what they have. They have a lot of fear that the territorial concessions will embolden Putin. European officials say that they see no sign that Putin wants to end his invasion of Ukraine, but if he does, they worry that any deal that does not respect Ukraine's territorial integrity could embolden Russia to attack beyond its borders again. Yet, it now seems likely that any peace accord would let Moscow at least keep control of Ukrainian land that it has taken by force, whether boundaries are formally changed or not. The Trump administration has also not rejected out of hand Russian claims to the rest of the Donbas region that Moscow has been unable to capture after nearly 4 years of war. Same point as Herbst. Moreover, Trump and other U.S. officials have made clear that they see great opportunities for business deals with Moscow once the war is over. European officials fear that ending Russia's isolation from the Western economy will give Moscow billions of dollars to reconstitute its military. Quote, if Russia's army is big, if the military budget is as big as it is right now, they will want to use it again, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas told reporters on Monday. Oh my gosh, dude. Europe struggles to exert leverage. Why is Europe struggling to exert leverage? Let's go back to the very beginning.
Why? Because everybody hates you, Europe. We all hate you. We've always hated you, and now we don't have to pretend to like you anymore. Fuck off, you bunch of Euro trash faggots.
Yet Europe's ability to influence a deal is limited, not least because it lacks the hard power to dictate terms. Oh, there you go. So asked and answered. The EU has a big potential bargaining chip in the form of Russian assets frozen in the bloc. But EU leaders have so far failed to agree on a proposal to use the assets to fund a 140 billion euro loan to Ukraine that would keep Kiev afloat in the fight for the next 2 years. Supposedly, Ukraine is going to run out of funds this February if they don't find a way to get their hands on those Russian assets, to try to show they can bring hard power to bear. A, quote, coalition of the willing led by France and Britain has pledged to deploy a, quote, reassurance force as part of post-war security guarantees to Ukraine.
What is a year, like every time they use that term reassurance force, I just have this fucking mental image of Starmer giving the boys double hand jobs on the front or something. What is a reassurance force? Is that like a comfort girl? That
no, reassurance force is
like,
a trigger. It's a trigger. I think reassurance force.
I'm pretty sure it's Starmer wants to go give hand jobs on the front line. I'm pretty sure we should look into this. I'm pretty sure that's what they're meaning. Macron. I think you're misreading this. You're misreading this. I'm not. Reassurance force means Starmer wants to give hand jobs. He does like the Ukrainian males.
Okay. Russia has rejected such a force, but even if it did,
Starmer, if you're listening, you're so gay. Like, just come out of the closet, dude. Like, just come out of the closet. We know that they were trying to blackmail you. That's why they burnt down your shit. Just come out of the closet. Your wife will leave you. You'll move on. You'll be happier as a gay man. Okay, sorry, I had to get that out.
The Europeans are now paying the price for not having invested in military capabilities over the last years, said Claudia Major, a senior vice president for the transatlantic security at the German Marshall Fund of the United States think tank. Yeah, the Europeans are not at the table because, to quote Trump, they don't have the cards, she said, referring to the U.S. president's put down of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky in February. That's not a put down. That was just an accurate statement of the reality. Like, I don't know why you're upset about that. So here, the Europeans are upset, as we've seen, that they are not at the table. They think that they deserve to be at the table. Now, let's take a look what happens when a European country actually does make it to the table, though. All right. Hungary does not need EU permission for Orban's trips to Moscow. I'm not even going to try to pronounce Szijjártó. Okay.
Szijjártó.
Okay. Budapest, November 29th. Hungary carries out an independent foreign policy, does not need EU permission to talk with Russia. Foreign Minister Piotr Szijjártó. How do you say it again? Szijjártó?
I don't know. I'm just making it up.
Okay. Said, I'm just going to call him Peter. Responding to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz's comment that Prime Minister Viktor Orban visited Moscow without an EU approval. Guys, but you guys would not approve anything. Remember when Orban tried to do this before? You guys didn't approve of it then. You guys are never going to approve. So we Hungarians do not need permission or mandate from Brussels, Berlin, or anyone else to participate in negotiations abroad. Whether Brussels like it or not, we pursue a sovereign foreign policy, and our decisions are determined by national interests, he wrote on his Facebook page, Banned in Russia. On November 28th, go ahead.
Imagine you're a German citizen reading this and thinking, what would you be thinking?
You would probably be, if I was a German citizen, I would be thinking like, that's right, freaking go get him, Oregon. Screw freaking.
Why isn't my leader?
Why are we doing this?
Why is he such a pussy? Yeah, that's what I'd be wondering, but that's just me.
Yeah. So on November 28th, at the beginning of a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin, Orban also said that Hungary pursues an independent foreign policy and would not succumb to external pressure and would continue to cooperate with Russia in many areas. You know what? I'm going to say that this is Hungary's take will have aged very well. They're going to be
Well, I
so
mean,
let's take a look. So they're upset that they're not at the table.
They're the only country in Europe that seems to be doing anything decent economically, right? And why? They've got cheap gas. They've got cheap energy. They actually sign deals with, countries like China to, build out their industry. That's why they're doing okay compared to, Merz
Because
in Germany.
Because they're actually doing politics. They're engaging in the politics that promote their national interests instead of some kind of crazy ideology, some kind of crazy ideological.
At the end of the day, that's why this is just the beginning of the end. You're going to see NATO collapse because it's not going to serve any purpose. And then you're going to see the EU collapse. And both will happen in our lifetimes, for sure.
So
don't know when, but it's going to happen. Like you're going to see both collapse.
Before we do the leaked phone call transcribed, which is controversial. I don't know if you've heard about this leaked phone call. Let's also do so this is Melinda Herring. Melinda Herring is on the level of John Herbst. She's also a professional Russophobe. So she actually speaks Russian, though, from my understanding.
Jared Kushner, they are heading to Russia today to present the very latest version of the Ukraine peace proposal to Moscow. Ukraine's top national security officials met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Miami Sunday. Rubio says they have made progress, but there's still work to be done.
This is comprehensive, what we're working on here today. It's not just about the terms that ends fighting. It's about also the terms that set up Ukraine for long-term prosperity. I thought we started laying the groundwork for that.
I also want to give hand jobs to the men on the front line.
In our communications throughout the week.
No, I think Marco Rubio is more like, I also want to get Ukraine taken care of so we can focus on Venezuela.
I think we built on that again today, but there's more work to be done.
Joining us now, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center, Melinda Herring.
This dumb bitch, this professional Russophobe.
Who's also in Ukraine at the moment. Melinda, great to see you this morning. Thank you very much for your time. So in the past, I know you've noted major concerns from Ukrainians regarding winter conditions during wartime.
That journalist, she's creepy looking.
Political climate in Ukraine right now with this possible.
They're both creepy.
There's something really off-putting about her, though. Like,
it's great to be with
I'm going to look at the Russophobe.
People are wondering what's in the deal that's going to be offered. And I think that people are going to focus on security guarantees. I just heard Marco Rubio, you showed a clip of him talking about this agreement setting Ukraine up for long-term prosperity. What's telling is he didn't say long-term security. And there's not going to be a deal unless the U.S. can provide Ukraine with some kind of long-term security. So that's something that I'm definitely watching for. I'm also watching for a discussion about territory. In the previous version, Russia had envisioned freezing the conflict lines and forcing Ukraine to give up 12% of the territory it currently holds in the Donbass. And that's a non-starter here in Ukraine. So those are the big issues that I'm going to be watching for the next day or two.
Right. And, Putin has said the war will end once Ukrainian troops withdraw from the territories they occupy. So not necessarily an encouraging message for Ukrainians. Also, another sticking point, not allowing Ukraine to become a NATO member. What are you anticipating? What are Ukrainians anticipating in terms of any potential movement on a deal this week?
Ukrainians are realistic. So it is dark and cold.
Are they?
And the sound that I hear on the streets in Ukraine is one of generators. So there's blackouts and there's brownouts, and people are relying on generators again just to do their jobs and make sure their houses are heated. No one here believes that there's going to be a deal this week. There's too many sticky points, and we haven't seen Russia show any desire to give or to compromise. And
why would they?
NATO, I don't think Ukrainians are very hung up on this. I think Ukrainians would love to have that. They know that it's the only way to guarantee their security, but they're also realistic and they know that it's off the table when it comes to the Germans in the US. So the question is, what kind of security guarantee can the U.S. provide, and how much air defense can the United States and Europe provide right now to keep
Not
Ukrainians
much.
in Ukraine? We just saw more strikes overnight, and we expect to see more. Putin is really increasing the pressure on civilians, and we see horrific images of strikes on cities, on schools, on hospitals, and it's ordinary people that are suffering.
Right. And, so many have said, even if Putin signs a deal,
Whew.
will he stick with it? No.
Something
So
hard
that's
about her.
agreement
She looks
he's
like
working
Lady
on.
Elaine Fairchild from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
This one?
No, the other one. She looks
This one?
wooden. Yeah, off-putting. Get her off the screen.
They're both off.
There's something not natural about her.
I wanted to ask you about this, Melinda. The president has said.
I think she's this tired because she's been sitting there biting her nails, watching the war go the wrong way for the last 3
President
years.
Trump, that corruption in Ukraine has not been helpful while working to hammer out this deal. This was after a top aide to Zelensky resigned, after that anti-corruption raid at his home. What has been the general sense or reaction to those developments where you are?
So the overall sense in Ukraine is one of relief. Ukraine changed massively after 2014. It experienced a massive democratic revolution, and Ukrainians want to live in a European way. They do not want to live in the old post-Soviet corrupt cesspool that Moscow would love to impose on Ukraine. So Ukrainians have turned a corner, and there's zero tolerance to corruption. So people are glad that the
Zero
chief of staff, Andriy
tolerance
Yermak,
to
is gone.
corruption.
They're glad that the justice minister and another minister was dismissed as well. And Ukrainians are outraged that people are stealing during the war. So the atmosphere here is one of relief.
There's theft in this here. There's gambling in this establishment. What? Don't say
and
so.
Also, really strong sense of betrayal, and they're upset at Zelensky that he tolerated this corruption scandal.
There she goes. She
No.
tells the truth at the end.
They're upset not that Zelensky tolerated this corruption. Zelensky's deeply mired in this corruption.
For as long as he did.
Melinda Herring, it is wonderful to have your voice this morning. Please stay safe.
It is
Thank you
wonderful.
for
Yeah,
talking.
right.
Thank you.
So yeah, Melinda Herring, the professional Russophobe, that's her take. Okay, now let's take a look here.
They're a neighbor you like.
No. Let's try to get back to. Okay, now here's the controversial transcript of the phone call. We're running out of time, so this is probably going to have to be the last thing we do. Damn, I had so much more to talk about, but okay. So this is the legendary controversial transcript where supposedly Steve Witkoff told the Russians how they need to use flattery to get on Donald Trump's good side. That was the headlines all over the place. Now let's see what the actual leaked transcript actually said. Steve Witkoff. Hola, Yuri Ushakov. Steve, hello. How are you? Steve Witkoff. Yuri, how's it going? Yuri Ushakov. Congratulations, my friend. I'm fine. You did a good job. Simply great work. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Then Steve Witkoff. Thank you, Yuri. And thank you for your support. I know that your country supported it, and thank you. Yuri Ushakov. Yes, yes, yes. And that is why we suspended the organization of the first Russian Arab Summit. Yes, because we think they are doing real work there in this region. Witkoff. Well, listen, I'm going to tell you something. I think that we can resolve the Russia and Ukraine issue. Everyone will be jumping for joy. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, you just need to solve a problem. Yuri Ushakov, the war, Russian-Ukrainian. Steve Witkoff. I know. How do we solve this? So Ushakov asks, my friend, I just wanted your advice. Do you think it would be useful for our bosses to talk on the phone? Do you believe it? And when do you think it would be possible? Witkoff. I think as soon as you suggest it, my man is ready to do it. Witkoff. Yuri, this is what I would do. My recommendation. I would make the call and just reiterate that you congratulate the president for this achievement, that you supported him, that you support him, that you respect that he is a man of peace, and that you are really glad that you saw it happen. I would say that. I think that it will be a good call, because let me tell you what I told the president. I told the president that the Russian Federation, has always wanted a peace agreement. That is my belief. I told the president that I believe that. And I think the question is, The problem is that we have two nations that are having a hard time reaching a compromise. When we do, we're going to have a peace agreement. I'm even thinking that maybe let's establish a 20-point peace proposal, just as we did in Gaza. We put together a 20-point Trump plan that was 20 points for peace, and I'm thinking maybe we'll do the same with you. My point is this, Yuri Ushakov. Okay, my friend. I think that same point could be discussed by our leaders. I agree with you, Steve, that he will congratulate, say that Trump is a true man of peace and so on. That is what he will say. But this is what I think would be amazing. What if, listen to me carefully. Ushakov says, I will discuss it with my boss and get back to you. Witkoff says, yes, because listen to what I'm saying. I just want you to say maybe that say this to President Putin, because I have the deepest respect for President Putin. Witkoff, maybe I'll tell President Trump, Steve and Yuri discuss a very similar 20-point peace plan, and that may be something that we could move the needle a little bit. We're open to that kind of thing, to exploring what it takes to get a peace deal done. Now, from me to you, I know what it will take to achieve a peace agreement in Donetsk and maybe a land swap somewhere. But I'm saying that instead of talking like that, let's talk with more hope. I think we're going to reach an agreement here. And I believe, Yuri, that the president will give me a lot of space and discretion to reach this agreement, Witkoff, so we can create the opportunity that after this, I talked to Yuri and we had a conversation. I think it could lead to great things. Ushakov says, that sounds good. And Witkoff says, one more thing. Zelensky comes to the White House on Friday. I know, Ushakov says. Witkoff, I will go to that meeting because they want me there. But I think that if possible, we have the call with your boss before that meeting on Friday. Before? Ushakov asks. Steve Witkoff, correct. Okay. I have your advice, so I'll discuss it with my boss and get back to you. We'll talk to you soon. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so the controversy is that Steve Witkoff gave the Russians the internal deets on how to manipulate Trump. But we can see, this is the controversial thing, all that Witkoff actually said is make sure that you congratulate him and put a positive spin, not a negative spin on this. So this is a huge nothing burger. It
just seems like a couple of diplomats talking shit. Yeah, talking about how they're going to approach things. That's how you work on a deal.
That is exactly how you work on a deal. So we can see that
you get in a room, you brainstorm. Okay, whatever. Okay, so what's the problem with that? Like, I don't get it.
Is that they're basically Steve Witt, and so there was I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but
I've been busy, man. I haven't been following this at all.
Several different representatives, were calling Steve Witkoff a traitor, saying that he works for the Russians, saying that he obviously is a disloyal American, and with with a link kind of to this, like they're referring to this. So they're basically saying that any sort of attempt to try to move the needle on peace, like the Russians said, even very humble, modest gains, they're very, very hardcore about trying to prevent that, and very hardcore about, and it's a shame, we're out of time, but I was going to also read some of Putin's statements, because Putin also talked about this whole entire controversy. But okay, so let's start doing our two scoops, I guess. What time? Yeah, we're already over time. Okay, two scoops. Number one. Angelina Jolie visits Ukraine, intervenes in bodyguard's military enlistment mid-trip. That's right. Angelina Jolie's bodyguard/driver got abducted by the Ukrainian Tetsaka. He got abducted by the body snatchers, and Angelina Jolie actually had to go and get him, bail him out. And of course, the news talked about how Angelina Jolie got the driver out of the mobilization or whatever. But what happened is after she left, they still mobilized him anyway. So that guy's still on the front lines now. So Angelina Jolie's bodyguard, see, you don't want to show your face in public if you are a Ukrainian able-bodied male, because they don't even care, dude. This is Angelina Jolie. If they're willing to do that, this is going to be nothing but horrible press for them. And it kind of was. So, and that's the reason.
Does anybody care about Angelina Jolie?
Well, this is why they kept it on the down low.
Well, the Ukrainian people were probably like, yeah, proper thing. Send them to the front,
Yeah.
Who cares about her? She's so irrelevant these days.
So here's the video of him getting abducted. I guess tap for sound. Let's go. Oh, he's going to be in.
Hollywood star Angelina Jolie found herself caught in a real-life war zone drama during her visit to Ukraine. The actress's bodyguard, who was also acting as her driver, was reportedly taken to a military recruitment office after being stopped at a checkpoint. Officials discovered he was a reservist with no valid paperwork, exempting him from a service and ordered him to report for military retraining immediately. Local media say Jolie was stunned as the man was taken away, and some reports even claim she called President Volodymyr Zelensky to try to get him released. Russia's state news agency TASS said Jolie contacted Zelensky's office to secure the release of their driver from a local recruitment center. The incident happened in the southern town.
So that, like I said, that did not last. That guy is now part of the AFU. So Angelina Jolie's bodyguard.
Like I said, I'm guessing the majority of Ukrainians were like, yeah, proper thing, send him to the front. Why does he get special privileges? Just because he's bodyguarding
Angelina Jolie's famous, right? Get on the front. Get out there.
Get on the front. Get the hell on the front.
All right. So third scoop of crazy, and I'm sure that most of our audience has already been aware of this, but I mean, this is some crazy shit. And of course, we talked about Kaya Kalas so much. We can't not show this crazy clown. So here is her retelling of, let's say, European history. Recent modern European history. She accuses the Russians over the last 100 years of invading 19 countries. Wait till you hear this. 1 minute.
The European Union itself will make a major contribution to the security guarantees with funding, training, and defense industry support. We are working on these details now, including the extension of our current missions in Ukraine. But security guarantees to Ukraine do not change the fact that the threat really here is Russia. In last 100 years, Russia has attacked more than 19 countries, some as many as 3 or 4 times. None of these countries has ever attacked Russia. So in any peace agreement, we have to put the focus on how to get concessions from Russian side, that they stop aggression for good and do not try to change borders by force. There are rarely wars in the world.
You forget Yugoslavia, hey?
As here. We have one aggressor and one victim. The focus should be on what Russia, the aggressor, must do, not what Ukraine, the victim, must sacrifice.
Okay. I have a different take. The way that realpolitik works is that the loser of the war is going to have to make the difficult compromises, and the winning party is going to, what do the Russians always say? Achieve their diplomatic ends, right? Achieve their diplomatic goals in the end. So Kaya Kalas apparently thinks that Russia invaded 19 countries, some of them as many as 3 times, and nobody's ever messed with them over the last 100 years. So I think that takes World War I off the table, but doesn't take World War II off the table. Crazy. Absolute bonkers.
I go back to who's actually listening to this person. Like, nobody is. Like, she can get up and make all the speeches she likes and look foolish doing so. But like I said, I can't see the EU being a thing for much longer. I just think it's going to break up because countries realize that they need to look out for their own national interests above all else. And you're not going to get that by being part of the EU. And, it's just a matter of time before Germany leaves. And once Germany leaves, the whole thing goes tits up. So, a person like Kalas, it's hard. It's weird to say, but man, do I ever miss Borrell. Right? Like, compared to her, Borrell was like the statesman of statesmen. And that's saying something. But it just goes to show the level that they have in these bureaucratic institutions. And the level of thinking that the Europeans have right now is just terrible. And like I said before, I know I sound like a broken record. All of these globalists are currently getting kicked out. And they'll get kicked out. And if the next group comes in and they don't start making change, then they'll get kicked out. The world is done with globalists, absolutely done. And, they're just going to keep kicking these people out until it gets to the point where the people that they get in actually start doing what the citizens demand, or that the citizens will just get so fed up and they're just going to, revolt. Those are the only two options I see right now. But, Callas, she's next level irrelevant, man. Like, nobody's listening to her.
She's
globally.
next level.
Nobody.
Crazy. She's next level bonkers.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Nobody's listening to this bunch. Right?
Third scoop of crazy. This is third or fourth? Third scoop of crazy, I think.
Let's get out of here, man.
All right, this is the last one then. Fine. Okay, so check out what the Indians are up to. That's right. If you thought that the cheese ended and the Bollywood screen, it does not. They're actually literally trying to do this. Yep. So I can think of a whole bunch of problems. What are you going to do? Try to shoot down drones out of your jetpack? Doesn't seem like you can do that. You need your arms to control the thing. Rapidly change positions to the top of the roof? I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like it's heavier than what it's worth, Like, I wouldn't want that.
I mean,
the only reason I'd want that is if you had to cross like a vast distance and it's like, okay, we can either hike 30 kilometers, I can use the jetpack. But other than that, I don't see any, like you said, on a front
think
line.
about crossing a body of water, maybe.
Yeah.
You could see certain things, but I mean, obviously, come on, just take a look at this. Do you think this is take a look at what modern warfare actually looks like and take a look at this. You think this guy is going to be safe from a drone? That drone is going to take out him and his jetpack by the time it takes the 22 seconds to fire that shit up. So, yep, this is where the Indians are at, and this is not a joke. They are for real about this thing, and I don't know what to think about it. I think that the Bollywood, they've been watching too much Bollywood. They've taken the Bollywood to the actual armed forces. So I guess that's going to be our last scoop of crazy, and we've already gone over time. So I guess peace.
All right, cheers.